I have a sort of a follow-up question to a previous question on the atonement, but as it relates to the free offer of the gospel. And this question is for Dr. Ferguson. Dr. Sproul recently preached a sermon in which he pointed out the serious situation today that many are, quote, knocking the L out of tulip. This situation is so serious that we find many Reformed pastors in America who have begun to knock the L out of tulip. Many of us at St. Andrews and many in the Reformed community throughout the United States were very disturbed to discover last year that John Piper invited Rick Warren to speak at his Desiring God conference. But there is a reason for Piper's invitation to Warren. Piper has stated that he can say, and I quote, Piper can say, Christ died for you to anyone on the street, unquote. And so John Piper has knocked the L out of tulip. Since the L in tulip teaches that Christ has not died for everyone on the street, but only for God's elect. Here's the question. Dr. Ferguson, I recently listened to a sermon of yours on sermon audio entitled The Free Offer of the Gospel. In this sermon, you quote early Puritan John Preston. I don't think anybody here has ever heard of John Preston, but early Puritan John Preston approvingly on the atonement. Preston believes that Mark 16:15, where it says, go and preach the gospel to every creature, he believes that John 16:15 means, go and tell every man without exception that there is good news for him. Christ is dead for him. You quoted John Preston approvingly. Dr. Ferguson, are you not guilty with John Piper of knocking the L out of tulip by saying that we should go and tell every man without exception that there is good news for him, that Christ is dead for him? According to the Westminster Confession of Faith, Christ is not dead, and Christ did not die for every man, but only for those the Father gave him. And the gospel isn't good news to every man. Agree?
Well, what you listened to, I think, is from 33 years ago. And I stand by every word. And I stand by every word because Preston and the most famous book in which that quotation is found, The Marrow of Modern Divinity, has always been a book revered by Calvinists. And they have always understood Preston to be saying, we preach Christ crucified, and we preach him to you. They have also understood that Jesus Christ is able to save to the uttermost all who come to God through him. And that's the foundation for the free offer of the gospel. The foundation for the free offer of the gospel is not election. The foundation for the free offer of the gospel is that Christ promises to save all those who come to him in faith. And in that connection, I think one of the most liberating things that any distinguished Reformed theologian has written is found in the words of Samuel Rutherford. There have been very few Calvinists in the history of the Reformed faith, higher Calvinists than Rutherford. Rutherford was what we call a supralapsarian. And Rutherford makes this statement. He says, the reprobate have exactly the same warrant to believe in Jesus Christ as do the elect. And that's the reason why Preston, I certainly myself, Martin Lloyd-Jones, I think I could quote him saying exactly the same thing, have always held the view that we do not offer Christ on the basis that the person who hears the offer is elect, but we offer Christ exclusively on the basis that he is able to save those who come to him. And for that reason, I think there may be variations in the way in which Calvinists express the gospel. But I don't think necessarily that John Piper would have been denying limited atonement in what he said. any more than Rutherford would have been denying it, or Preston denying it, or Thomas Boston denying it. And so I think, I think the key thing here is a huge question about which I also think there is not huge clarity. That we offer the gospel not on the basis of our knowledge of election, but we offer the gospel on the basis that Christ saves all those who come to him. And it's that, certainly to me, that both gives me an enormous sense of freedom in proclaiming the gospel and an enormous sense of confidence in proclaiming the gospel, because I know that he will save those for whom he died.
Can we have another one from the